For just a split second, it looked like another hard
Look at
basketball
this.
play.
Look at this.
Then the
You're
replay
trying
started
to punch her
circulating,
in the
and
throat,
suddenly
guy.
everyone was watching the
What are
same
you
moment from
doing?
every possible
Look at
angle.
this.
Alyssa Thomas made physical
Arrest this
contact with
hoodlum.
Caitlin Clark during an
Lock
intense
this
sequence,
thug up.
and within
What are we
minutes,
doing
that
here?
single play had
What
become
are we
one of the
doing?
biggest
Like, let's be
talking points
real
across
here.
the WNBA. Fans weren't simply debating whether it deserved a foul or a harsher penalty. They were arguing about something much bigger. Where should the line be drawn between physical basketball and player safety? The timing couldn't have made the conversation any louder. Every game involving Caitlin Clark already carries enormous attention, and this incident only added fuel to a debate that has followed her throughout the season. Television shows discussed it. Social media exploded with slow-motion replays. Basketball analysts broke down the contact frame by frame, while supporters and critics reached completely different conclusions from the exact same footage. Some viewed it as part of the natural intensity of professional basketball. Others believed it was another example of contact that crossed the line. Then another voice entered the discussion, and people immediately started paying attention. It wasn't an anonymous social media account or another viral headline trying to generate outrage. It was Lisa Leslie, one of the most respected figures in women's basketball. When someone with her experience speaks about player safety, officiating, and respect for the game, people tend to listen. Her comments didn't call for unnecessary drama or point fingers at one individual. Instead, she shifted the conversation towards something many believed mattered even more, making sure every player is protected while preserving the physical nature that makes basketball so competitive. That changed the direction of the debate. Suddenly, the focus wasn't only on one controversial play involving Alyssa Thomas and Caitlin Clark. It became a broader conversation about consistency, accountability, and whether the league can maintain its competitive edge while ensuring player safety. One sequence on the court had evolved into a discussion about the future of the WNBA itself, and that is why this moment continues to dominate conversations long after the final buzzer sounded. To understand why this particular play generated such an intense reaction, it's important to recognize that Caitlin Clark is no longer just another rookie competing in the WNBA. Every time she steps onto the court, millions of fans are watching, every highlight spreads across social media within minutes, and nearly every controversial moment becomes national news. Whether people admire her style of play or believe the attention has become overwhelming, one thing is difficult to dispute: Clark has become the center of one of the biggest conversations in professional basketball. That level of visibility changes everything. A routine hard foul involving most players might be discussed briefly before attention shifts to the next game. But when the same type of contact involves Clark, the conversation rarely ends with the final whistle. Analysts revisit the replay, former players weigh in with their perspectives, and fans dissect every angle, searching for evidence that supports their own interpretation. The debate grows beyond the game itself and becomes part of a much larger discussion about officiating, player treatment, and the league's future. This latest incident followed that familiar pattern. As clips circulated online, supporters argued that the play reinforced long-standing concerns about how consistently physical contact is officiated. Others pushed back, insisting that basketball has always been a physical sport and that emotional reactions shouldn't redefine the standards of competition. The same sequence produced two completely different narratives, each supported by passionate fans convinced they were seeing the full picture. What makes moments like these even more significant is the environment surrounding the WNBA today. The league is experiencing unprecedented attention, attracting new audiences while longtime supporters continue to celebrate the talent that has been building for decades. With that growth comes greater scrutiny. Every referee's whistle, every post-game interview, and every controversial play is examined far more closely than it might have been only a few seasons ago. That's why this discussion quickly became about much more than one collision on the court. It reflected the enormous expectations now surrounding Caitlin Clark, the responsibility that comes with being one of the league's most recognizable stars, and the challenge facing the WNBA as it balances physical competition with consistent officiating and player safety. By the time Lisa Leslie entered the conversation, the debate had already grown far beyond a single foul. It had become another defining moment in an ongoing discussion about the league's future. As the debate continued to grow, one voice carried more weight than almost any other. Lisa Leslie isn't simply another television analyst offering a quick opinion after a controversial game. She's a Hall of Famer, a WNBA pioneer, and someone who has experienced the physical demands of professional basketball firsthand. That background is exactly why so many people paid attention when she addressed the incident. Rather than focusing on outrage or assigning blame, Leslie steered the conversation toward the principles she believed should define the league. She emphasized that basketball is naturally a physical sport, but she also made it clear that player safety should never become secondary to competition. In her view, protecting athletes and preserving the intensity of the game are not opposing ideas, they should exist together. She also stressed the importance of consistent officiating, arguing that every player deserves to be judged under the same standards regardless of reputation or popularity. That message immediately resonated because it shifted the discussion away from one controversial replay and toward a broader issue. Instead of asking whether one specific play crossed a line, people began asking whether the line itself is being enforced consistently throughout the league. Leslie's comments challenged everyone involved, from players and referees to league officials, to think beyond a single moment and consider the long-term integrity of the game. At the same time, it's important to separate what Leslie actually said from the conclusions some fans drew afterward. She did not call for special treatment for Caitlin Clark, nor did she suggest that one player should receive different rules than anyone else. Her emphasis remained on accountability, respect, and applying the same standard to every athlete on the floor. That distinction often gets lost. One group interpreted Leslie's comments as confirmation that Clark hasn't been adequately protected. Another believed she was simply reinforcing values that have always been essential to professional basketball. Those are interpretations, not direct quotations. What Leslie clearly communicated was a consistent philosophy: the WNBA's continued growth depends on balancing physical competition with fairness, respect, and player safety. Coming from one of the most respected figures in the sport, that perspective added a level of authority that transformed the conversation from a debate about one play into a broader discussion about the league's future. By this point, the conversation had moved far beyond one replay or one whistle. It had become a reflection of two very different ways of looking at the WNBA, and neither side seemed willing to back down. The debate was no longer just about Alyssa Thomas or Caitlin Clark. It was about what fans believe the league should represent as it continues to grow. On one side were those who felt the incident highlighted a larger pattern. They argued that Clark has repeatedly found herself on the receiving end of unusually physical play, and because she has become one of the league's biggest attractions, every questionable hit naturally receives greater attention. From their perspective, this isn't about asking officials to favor one player. It's about making sure the same rules are applied consistently, regardless of who is involved. They believe protecting star players ultimately protects the quality of the game itself. Others strongly disagreed with that interpretation. They argued that physical basketball has always been part of the WNBA and that Clark isn't experiencing anything previous stars haven't faced. In their view, intense defense, hard screens, and aggressive competition are all part of earning success at the professional level. They worry that focusing too heavily on one player's experiences risks creating a different standard, even if that's not the intention. To them, toughness has always been one of the league's defining characteristics. Officiating quickly became another major point of discussion. Every replay seemed to create a new round of analysis. Some fans questioned whether referees had been consistent in enforcing the rules, while others pointed out that split-second decisions are never as simple as they appear in slow motion. The same clip was watched millions of times, yet it continued to produce completely different conclusions depending on who was watching. Clark's popularity added another layer to the conversation. Her games attract enormous audiences, her highlights spread across social media within minutes, and every major storyline involving her reaches people who may not normally follow the WNBA. Supporters see that visibility as an incredible opportunity for the league. Critics, however, caution against allowing every headline to revolve around one player when so many talented athletes contribute to the sport's success. Perhaps that's why this debate has proven so difficult to resolve. Both sides believe they're defending something important. One is focused on player safety, consistency, and protecting the league's brightest stars. The other is determined to preserve the competitive identity that has defined women's professional basketball for decades. Those priorities aren't necessarily incompatible, but finding the right balance has become one of the biggest challenges facing the WNBA. And with every high-profile game, every controversial call, and every viral replay, that conversation only grows louder. As the headlines continued to spread, it became increasingly clear that this discussion was no longer centered on one collision during one regular season game. The incident had become part of a much broader conversation about where the WNBA stands today and where it hopes to go in the years ahead. In many ways, it reflected the growing pains of a league experiencing more attention than at any other point in its history. Caitlin Clark's arrival has undeniably expanded the spotlight on women's basketball. Her games routinely generate national headlines, highlight clips circulate across social media within minutes, and every major matchup attracts viewers who may never have watched a WNBA game before. That surge in interest has created enormous opportunities for the league, but it has also introduced a level of scrutiny that touches nearly every aspect of the game. Every controversial whistle, every hard foul, and every post-game comment is now examined by millions of people instead of thousands. With that attention comes responsibility for everyone involved. Players are expected to compete with the same passion and intensity that has always defined professional basketball, while also recognizing that every emotional moment can become tomorrow's biggest headline. Referees face the difficult challenge of making split-second decisions under a microscope where every replay is slowed down, analyzed, and debated from multiple angles. League officials are expected to maintain confidence in the integrity of the competition while responding to a fan base that is larger, louder, and more engaged than ever before. That is one reason Lisa Leslie's remarks resonated with so many people. Rather than reducing the conversation to one player or one controversial sequence, she emphasized principles that extend far beyond a single game: player safety, consistent officiating, accountability, and respect for the sport. Those ideas speak to the long-term health of the league, regardless of which teams or players happen to be in the spotlight. The fan response also highlights how much the WNBA audience has evolved. Longtime supporters bring years of history and perspective, while newer fans often arrive with fresh expectations shaped by today's media environment. Those perspectives don't always align, and that difference helps explain why the same play can produce completely opposite reactions. One group may view an incident as evidence that greater consistency is needed, while another sees it as the natural intensity of elite competition. Neither conversation exists in isolation anymore. They unfold together in real time across television, podcasts, and social media. Ultimately, this is why moments like the Alyssa Thomas and Caitlin Clark incident continue to resonate long after the final buzzer. They become symbols of a larger discussion about growth, fairness, competition, and responsibility. As the WNBA enters one of the most significant periods in its history, every major moment is no longer judged only by the outcome on the scoreboard. It's also measured by what it reveals about the league's identity, its standards, and the direction it hopes to take as its audience continues to expand. As the conversation continues, one thing seems certain: this discussion isn't ending with a single game or a single controversial play. Every upcoming matchup involving Caitlin Clark will likely be viewed through the same lens, with fans paying close attention to how physical the games become, how officials respond in critical moments, and whether the league can maintain consistency when the spotlight is at its brightest. Fair or not, that has become the reality of the season. The officials will undoubtedly remain under increased scrutiny. Every close call, every hard foul, and every technical decision will be replayed repeatedly across television and social media. What might once have been an ordinary judgment call can now dominate basketball discussions for days. That level of attention creates enormous pressure, not only for referees but also for players who know every action on the floor could become the next viral clip. League leadership also faces an important challenge. As interest in the WNBA continues to grow, expectations are growing alongside it. Fans want to see a league that embraces tough, competitive basketball while applying the rules fairly and consistently. Players want confidence that every game will be officiated under the same standards, regardless of the teams involved or the attention surrounding a particular matchup. Finding that balance won't satisfy everyone, but it will shape how the league is perceived moving forward. For Caitlin Clark, the focus is unlikely to change. Every performance, every rivalry, and every emotional moment will continue attracting extraordinary attention. At the same time, every other player sharing the court will remain